What is up, friends? Today I want to talk about Big Mouth and Coach Steve's stunted development. I got some great comments from a lot of you suggesting that maybe Steve is the way he is because he was in the monster world for too long, and I absolutely love this theory, so I decided to dive into it and lay out how it might be possible. Thanks to everyone who suggested it. It's incredibly apparent throughout the series that Steve is mentally stunted in numerous ways. He's 47 years old, he can't read, he doesn't understand countless things about the world around him, he's a virgin, and has never even been on a date. It's clear that he's a developmentally stunted individual. Despite this, Steve appears to have a good heart and craves human connection, though he does experience these things through the eyes of a child. We learned in the final episode of season 2 that humans are not supposed to spend longer than an hour in the monster dimension. Maurice explains why.
If you stay here, you will be developmentally stunted forever, either physically like child weightlifters or mentally.
So humans who stay in this world too long could become developmentally stunted physically or mentally. Coach Steve fits the bill for a human who's developmentally stunted mentally, so it's definitely possible that he was stuck in the monster dimension as a child. I have two theories on how this could have played out. The first focuses on Steve's hormone monster, Rick. Now, we see that Rick is not a great hormone monster. He even says so himself.
I'm a bad hormone monster.
We also saw that it's possible for hormone monsters to leave portals to their dimension open in the human world. Tyler did this in the season 2 finale, which led to Nick, Andrew, and Jesse visiting the monster dimension. I think it's definitely possible that Rick left a portal to the monster world open and Steve went through it, leading to a stunted mental development. This could also explain Rick's motivations as Steve's hormone monster. The guilt of being responsible for Steve's mental state is why Rick stuck with Steve until he finally lost his virginity. In fact, Rick retired from being a hormone monster completely after Rick finally did push-ups on a lady, even though Rick was actually still working with Nick at the time. He felt he had a responsibility to help Steve, but not Nick. My second theory is a little bit darker, but I actually think that it lines up surprisingly well. One thing I noticed is that Steve's understanding of the world seems to sit at the level of a very young child. The dude can't even read, which tells me that he may have gotten stuck in the monster dimension when he was much younger, maybe even younger than puberty. In the season 2 finale, we see Jessie working with the depression kitty as her primary, and even though we had just learned that staying in the monster dimension for longer than an hour would developmentally stunt a human, the depression kitty locked Jessie in the depression ward and tried to keep her there. It seems like the kitty was trying to stunt Jessie's development as a coping mechanism for the things she was depressed about. We also learned a lot about Coach Steve's past in this new season. We found out that his dad wasn't really a good father figure to him and didn't spend much time with him. In fact, Steve felt a much stronger connection with a man named Gary, who his mother was having an affair with. He reminisced fondly about how Gary would spend time with him, play ball, bring him illegal fireworks, and we even saw Steve try to take on this same role for Jay. Then we learned the incredibly dark ending to Gary's story.
Whatever happened to your Gary?
Oh, he locked me in the car with him and shot his brains out of his head. Bye, Jay.
You heard that right, folks. Gary killed himself in front of Steve. And the fact that he was able to lock Steve in the car with him tells me that Steve was probably pretty young when this happened. So, at a very young age, Steve lost his best friend and father figure. This would mess up a child immensely, and I think that it messed him up so much that the depression kitty became his #1 monster when he was a child. We know that Steve is willing to make friends with monsters and trust people pretty quickly, so I wouldn't be surprised if the depression kitty befriended Steve, brought him to the depression ward in the monster dimension, and kept him down there for longer than an hour, using this stunted mental state as a way to cope with the loss of Gary. I know, it's a really dark theory, but with what we know about Steve's past and the nature of his mental state, I think this all lines up pretty well. I also think that Rick, having seen all of this go down, could have just felt really bad for Steve, which is why he stuck with him as a hormone monster until he lost his virginity at the age of 47. Man, I was excited to dive into this theory, but it got a lot darker than I expected, though I think it actually might hold up. What do you folks think? Is Steve's mental state a result of the monster dimension? Do you think it had anything to do with Rick, the depression kitty, or Gary's death? Let me know below in the comments. And if you like this video, please make sure to comment, like, subscribe, and check out my other Big Mouth videos. I've got reviews of the first 2 seasons and a nice breakdown of every monster we meet in season 2, so check them out. Alright folks, I will catch you later.
Johnny!
Two cellos.